I didn't think much of it when I knocked on the door that night. I wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to be simple. Drop off a camera lens I'd borrowed from my friend. Maybe stay for a quick beer, then head home before the rain got worse. But she opened the door, not him. "Evan?" she said, like she wasn't sure it was me at first. I hadn't seen Clara in a while, maybe since the graduation barbecue. Same easy posture, same calm voice, only now she was wearing reading glasses and had a towel over one shoulder, like she'd been in the middle of cooking or cleaning or just existing quietly before I disrupted it. The house smelled like lemon soap and something warm. Not cookies, not bread, just heat and something faintly sweet that clung to the hallway. "He's not here," she said, adjusting the towel. "Went up north for the weekend." "You didn't know?" I shook my head. "Guess I missed the memo." For a second we both just stood there, the sound of the rain behind me filling the gap where conversation should have gone. I could feel it dripping from my hair onto my collar, each cold drop reminding me how dumb it would be to walk home again. She glanced past me at the street. "You're soaked." "It's fine," I said too quickly. She stepped back, not a grand gesture, just enough for air to move between us. "Come in, at least. You'll ruin that camera if it gets any wetter." I followed, trying not to look like I was looking at anything. The living room was dim, one lamp, a folded blanket on the arm of the couch, a half-finished crossword at the table. Not lonely, just lived in. She handed me a towel without asking if I needed one, then went back to whatever she'd been doing, rinsing something at the sink. The whole time, I kept thinking about how quiet it was. No TV, no music, just the rain and the clink of a dish in water. "You still shooting for the college?" she asked after a while, not turning around. "Sometimes," I said. "Mostly freelance now. Weddings, portraits, whatever pays." She hummed. It wasn't approval or disapproval, more like a placeholder for whatever thought she didn't say out loud. I sat at the edge of the couch, towel pressed against the back of my neck, trying to think of a reason to leave that didn't sound like an excuse. Then the thunder rolled in, low and mean, and the lights flickered just once. Enough for her to look up from the sink, then at me. Not panic, just calculation, like she was measuring the night differently now. She dried her hands on the towel at her hip. "If it gets worse, you shouldn't drive." "I walked," I said. That earned a short, dry laugh, the kind you give someone who just confirmed your suspicion that they're a little bit stupid. She crossed her arms, leaning against the doorway. "You can stay until morning if it comes to that." It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't anything, really, but the way she said it, soft, almost absent-minded, like offering me a place there didn't cost her anything, lodged itself somewhere under my ribs. I nodded, maybe too quickly, like a kid given permission for something he hadn't dared ask for. We went back to the quiet. She to her crossword, me to pretending I wasn't dripping on her floor. But that night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. I told myself it was just neighborly, that I was only there because my friend had texted me from up north, asking if I could swing by and help his mom with a busted outlet in the garage. He said she'd been meaning to get it fixed, and since I owed him for the lens, it made sense. It didn't feel like sense when I knocked again a week later. She opened the door the same way, cautious first, then soft when she recognized me. "Twice in 1 week," she said, a little wry smile. "People will talk." It was a joke, but she didn't hold eye contact after she said it. The garage smelled like damp cardboard and motor oil, the kind of smell that stuck in your clothes. She showed me the outlet. Black at the edges, a faint scorch mark like someone had tried to plug in a space heater one too many winters. "I don't think it's dangerous," she said. Arms folded, weight shifted to one leg. "Just temperamental." I knelt down, tools spread out, trying to look like I knew more than I did. She stayed nearby but not close. Leaning against a workbench, scrolling her phone without scrolling, thumb hovering like she wasn't reading anything at all. Every so often, I caught her rubbing her thumb against her palm, like her hands were restless but didn't have anything to hold. "You work too much," I said without thinking, wires between my fingers. She looked up, surprised, maybe at the comment, maybe at the fact that I'd said it. "Excuse me? You look tired." "Not in a bad way," I said quickly. "Just like you carry a lot." She let out a small laugh, quick, low, like air escaping a sealed jar. "You notice too much," she said, eyes back on her phone, but her thumb stopped moving. We sat in that uneven air for a while, me pretending to be focused, her pretending to be uninterested. The storm outside had faded, but the clouds hadn't left, and the light through the garage window was a dull gray, like the day couldn't decide whether to finish or start over. When I finally got the outlet working, I stood up, brushing dust off my jeans. She was watching me. Not obviously, just one of those sideways looks you catch when someone forgets to hide it fast enough. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't have to." "I mean it," she interrupted, a little too quick, then softened it with a half smile. "It's been a while since someone just helped without me asking twice." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, awkward and too aware of how close we were standing now. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't, and that silence felt louder than words. It started as dinner that wasn't supposed to be dinner. I dropped by to return the wrench I'd borrowed from her garage, thinking I'd just hand it over at the door. But she had a pan on the stove, a half-cut tomato on the board, and she said, "You're here. Sit." I made too much anyway. I told myself it was polite, nothing more. The kitchen light was warm, not bright, one of those bulbs that hummed if you listened for it. Rain again, light this time, just enough to beat against the window and make the air smell like wet leaves. She poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if I wanted any. We ate quietly at first, me chewing too slowly, her glancing at her phone every so often, screen lighting her face like a small moon. "You always this quiet?" she asked eventually, fork tapping the plate edge. "Not always. Only around me?" I smiled, but not enough to be brave. "Maybe." That earned the smallest laugh. Not amused, just surprised it came out of me. Halfway through the meal, her phone buzzed. She looked at it, then let it face down on the table, a faint crease forming between her brows. "Everything okay?" I asked. A pause. Then, "Just my ex. He still finds reasons to remind me what I'm doing wrong. Even now." I wanted to ask more, but she picked up her fork like that ended the subject. Only it didn't, not really. The air around us shifted, got heavier, like a room remembering something you tried to forget. She leaned back in her chair, wine glass in hand, eyes half closed like the weight of the day was finally catching up. "You ever feel like you got out of something?" she said softly. "But it still owns part of you?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I said, "more than I want to admit." Her eyes found mine then, not searching, just seeing. Really seeing. Long enough to make me forget what I was supposed to do with my hands. We sat there like that, the clock ticking louder than it had any right to, the smell of tomatoes and garlic cooling between us. Neither of us moving, both of us very aware of how close the table suddenly felt. I don't know what I would have said next. Something stupid probably, but my hand moved anyway, slow like a thought forming without words. Halfway to hers, fingers barely off the table. She exhaled through her nose, a quiet, almost sigh. "You should go now," she said, not unkind. I did, but only my body left that room. I tried not to see her again. For a week, I walked different streets, answered my friends' texts like nothing had changed, told myself that whatever I'd almost done at that kitchen table would fade like a dream. A sharp one, sure, but still just a dream. Didn't. A Thursday evening, my phone buzzed. "Printer won't connect again. You were good at fixing things last time. Any chance you're free?" No emojis. No pretext beyond a piece of technology that probably just needed to be turned off and on. I should have said no. I told myself that in the car on the short drive over. Said it again in the driveway. And again when I knocked and heard her steps on the other side. She opened the door with that same quiet composure. Jeans, hair pinned up this time, glasses sliding a little down her nose. "Sorry to bother you," she said. "You didn't." I lied. The printer was in her study. A small room lined with books and a single framed photo of her and my friend from a decade ago. Graduation caps, wide smiles, a life already different. I fiddled with cables, buttons, drivers, anything to justify the fact that I was in that house again. She stood behind me, not close but not far. Arms folded, silence stretching between us like it had a heartbeat. When I finally got the machine to spit out a test page, I turned, ready to leave, ready to run. But she didn't move. Neither did I. We just stood there in a room that suddenly felt too small for two people carrying that much unsaid weight. "What are we doing?" she said finally, her voice low, careful. It landed like a pin dropped in a church. I swallowed hard. "I don't know," I said. "I can't stop thinking about you. But I don't know what that means. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that." She exhaled. Not a sigh, not anger, just air leaving someone who's been holding it too long. "This isn't. It can't be," she said, her eyes flicking toward the photo on the shelf, then back to me. "I know," I said, "but it doesn't feel like nothing." Her hand moved, just slightly, like she wanted to reach for something, or push it away. For a moment we just looked at each other, no words, no excuses, just two people trying not to fall into the gravity they'd both created. I wanted her to tell me to leave. I wanted her to say stay. Anything but the silence pressing into the spaces we'd both left empty. She didn't say anything, just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. I didn't hear from her for a few days after that night in the study. No texts, no calls, just an unspoken retreat, like we'd both stepped too close to something with a current neither of us could swim in. I tried to throw myself into work, weddings, an engagement shoot, editing sessions that bled into morning. But every time my phone buzzed, a small, stupid part of me hoped it was her. Then it was. "If you're not busy, I could use a hand moving some boxes from the attic." Too heavy for me. That was all. No punctuation except the ellipsis that somehow said more than any sentence. When I arrived, she didn't make small talk. Just led me up the narrow pull-down ladder to a low, hot attic that smelled of insulation and old paper. Boxes, dust, the faint sound of rain on the roof. Like the weather had started learning our rhythm. We worked in silence at first. She handed me boxes. I carried them down. But when I opened one by mistake, the bottom sagging under its own weight, a stack of photographs spilled across the hallway floor. Not family photos. One face over and over. A man I didn't recognize. Smiling with her. Younger, maybe my age then. She froze at the bottom of the stairs. Eyes locked on the photos like they'd been waiting years to be found. I bent to gather them, careful, quiet. "Sorry," I murmured. Her voice caught when she spoke. "His name was Daniel. We were going to get married." I stopped moving. "He died in a car accident," she said, still looking at the photos, not me. 24. Same age you are now. The air in the hallway changed, thinner somehow, heavier at the same time. "I'm sorry," I said, and it sounded inadequate, like trying to hold water with my hands. She crouched, picked up a photo with him laughing, head thrown back, the sun turning his hair gold. Sometimes I forget I ever laughed like that. I didn't know whether to leave her alone or reach out, so I sat beside her on the floor, back against the wall, the photos between us like a fragile bridge. "I didn't expect to feel anything again," she said finally. "And when you looked at me that night, it scared me, because it felt familiar, and it felt alive." The house was quiet except for the rain tapping at the windows and our breathing, both uneven now. She took a breath like she hadn't allowed herself to in years, and for the first time, She looked at me without fear. We didn't plan to sit there for an hour, but neither of us moved. The photos lay scattered like a timeline someone had shaken out of order. The rain slowed to a faint patter, the kind you only notice when everything else has gone still. I watched her fingers trace the edge of one picture, slow, careful, like she was afraid the past would tear if she held it too hard. "You don't owe me this," I said finally low. "Any of it. You don't even owe me conversation." She gave a small, bitter smile, eyes still on the photo. "You think I'm telling you because I owe you?" I shook my head, embarrassed. "I just don't want you to feel like I'm pressing into places I don't belong." Now she looked at me, really looked. "You're the first person who hasn't tried to fix me by pretending none of this ever happened." We sat in that truth like it was a third person in the room, not heavy, but undeniable. "I didn't come here thinking," I started, then stopped. She let the silence hang. Then, "Neither did I." I rubbed my palms against my jeans, a nervous tick I didn't bother hiding anymore. "But we're here." Her laugh was soft, surprised at itself. "We're here," she repeated, like testing how the words tasted in her mouth. I leaned my head back against the wall, eyes on the ceiling, heart loud enough I worried she could hear it. "What do we do now?" I asked. She sighed, not out of frustration, but like a long breath she'd been saving. "We don't lie to ourselves. Not about what this is. Not about what it costs." My throat tightened. I nodded. She set the photo down on the stack beside us. Her hand lingered there, not quite reaching mine, just close enough that the air between our fingers felt like a held breath. Minutes passed like that. No words, just the quiet hum of a house waiting to see if it was about to hold a secret. Then she shifted, barely, her fingers brushing mine. Not a grab, not a gesture for reassurance. Just a small, deliberate act of letting go of something unseen. I turned my palm up. She let hers rest there, light, uncertain but present. We didn't speak, didn't kiss, didn't move. We just sat there, two people no longer pretending the world outside that room had more gravity than the one we'd built here. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down, and that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. It's been months now. I'm telling you this from a small cafe across town. Laptop open, half a cup of coffee gone cold while I stare out at a street that's busy pretending nobody ever feels anything complicated. She's not mine. That's the first thing I had to learn, the hard way but the honest way. You can't own what you were never promised. But we see each other. That hasn't stopped. It just changed shape. We didn't burn down our lives. There were no explosions, no fights, no tearful ultimatums. What we built, if you can call it that, lives in the space between what we could have done and what we chose not to. Sometimes she texts me a picture of a book she thinks I'd like. Sometimes I swing by to fix something at the house that's stubborn or too heavy or just another excuse to stand in the same air again. And sometimes we don't speak for weeks. Not because of shame, because what we shared taught us how to carry quiet without fear. I think about that night on the floor a lot. Not about the touch, about the stillness that followed. The kind where you know two hearts are in the same room, not begging for forever, just asking to be understood for a breath or two. She's softer now, not toward me, toward herself. Like letting someone see her pain didn't reopen it. It gave it somewhere to rest. And me? I'm less restless. I used to think love had to look like a movie. Some big, bright declaration. Something you could hold up to the light and say, "See? Proof." But what I had with her, what I still have, doesn't need proof. It was the quiet shift of two people carrying heavy things, setting them down, and finding they could breathe a little easier standing near each other. We didn't cross every line. We didn't destroy what mattered. We just stood at the edge and, for once, didn't run from the truth of what we felt. Love, I learned, isn't always about claiming. Sometimes it's about witness, about saying without words, "I see you. You matter. You were worth feeling something impossible for." I don't regret it. Not any of it. Sometimes, late at night, when the world's quiet and the only sound is my own breath, I can still hear her voice from that first night, soft, casual. A door I didn't know would lead here. Stay until morning. And maybe, in a way, I still am. If this story found a place inside you, tell me what part stayed behind. I want to know if you've ever felt something that lived quietly but changed everything.